Dani Busboom Kelly has been introduced in front of a hearty crowd at the Devaney Center today as part of the welcome ceremony. And what will be rather interesting, she really becomes the first coach, the first major hire in what is now officially the new world of college athletics.
Yeah.
The new, I guess we should say the new world version 4.0 or 5.0. I don't even know how many versions we've been through. Certainly when Matt Rule was hired, we had transfer portal. NIL had come on the scene. But now we're entering into the world of rev share. And John Cook talked about a little bit last week at his press conference about some of the challenges that she'll have moving forward. And, and certainly as Nebraska is trying to find new ways to generate revenue, because we are in an era now where the essentially player salaries, call them that, are part of the line item in the budget. And Matt Rule bragged about it. Hey, this is something we put in our budget. We're not having to raise the money, but you are wanting to make sure that you continue to bring in new sources of revenue. And this was even before John Cook retired, when we talked about, well, is volleyball day going to be an annual thing? Or, how are they going to address that? How can they continue to grow that sport? They're going to add another 1,500 seats to the Devaney Center. At least that's the plan. And certainly that they will fill it. But then there's just the ultimate challenge of, can they keep the winning going? Can they continue to play at this extremely high level? I mean, this is Duke-like levels if you compare it to men's basketball, where every year it's not Sweet 16 or bust. It's Sweet 16. That's on the bottom side of the floor.
That's a good.
That's not how we do this. We're above that, and that's where Nebraska volleyball has been really for the last decade, but for the most part on the last
20,
35. Well, 30, 35, 40 years if you go back to Terry Pettit.
I love that comparison, man, because, I've heard a lot of people talking about Nebraska volleyball in the last week since the news came down and trying to figure out, where this, like, what type of job this is and how do you compare it to other really good coaches leaving. And I think the Duke one is a good comparison from, like, this reason. They've won a ton, but it's spread out, right, over decades, where under Krzyzewski, they won their first title in, 1991? They won their last title under Coach K. Was it in 2015? So you're talking about, that's 25 years. And so you look at John Cook, it actually doesn't span that many years of his first championship, but in terms of the program's first national championship in the mid-90s to the last one that they won, not, closing in on now a decade ago, kind of a similar timeline, but always in the mix. And when you had a season where it was Sweet 16 or worse, it was like, wow, that was a disappointment. And then other times they got to the Final Four and were just unable to close the deal and to win the entire thing. And so that's the type of program that she's inheriting. This is not Alabama post Nick Saban, because that was a more concentrated number of championships in a smaller time period, which completely warped, everything. And I think it's going to warp Alabama expectations for generations to come. So can she keep this going at this high of a level? It's so difficult to be the coach that follows the coach that did it all. The more I listen to him talk about it, the more I listen to her and just the necessity in a way that he and her felt to, like, go away, do something different, because a lot of people have done the comparison of Osborne to Solich. I think we talked about it last week with Lincoln Arneal. A lot of people have done that comparison. The big difference, of course, though, is the obvious one, and that's Frank Solich didn't go anywhere else. He stayed in Nebraska. He didn't take the Minnesota job in the mid to late 90s because Tom promised him the gig, when he was going to retire. If he goes off and he can find his own footing, at a different location and comes home, is he better? I don't know. But at the very least, she has done that. She has gone away, and she's, of course, had a ton of success, which is really going to help. That she has ideas of her own that she can apply to this job right now.
Certainly she, her roots in volleyball are Nebraska, both as a player and as an assistant coach. So certainly some of that carried with her, a lot of it carried with her to her other stops, including Louisville, where she turned that program completely around and made them a national power in a very short period of time. But what I'll be curious to see, and we won't really get a chance to appreciate it until, we've gotten into the next season and maybe even the next seasons, but the little things that she does that might be a little bit different, because while you want to keep, in the words of Walter White, nothing stops this train. While you want to keep that going, you also don't want to try to be carbon copy of the person that you just replaced.
You can't
because
be.
You can't be.
Nope.
You're not John Cook.
Correct.
You may have been coached by John Cook. You may have picked up some of John Cook's philosophies. Maybe you've even picked up on some of his sayings or his mannerisms. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't been around Dani as a coach. But you still have to be yourself. You have to do what it is that you think is best, because kids will look right through that. They'll see if you're not being genuine. And I'm not here to say that she wouldn't be, but what I will be curious to see is those other little things that she will bring that will be uniquely her own, and how that meshes specifically with this group, because certainly the players that she is going to recruit down the road will have no concept of John Cook. But the ones that she inherits now, and she's inheriting a really good team and a good core, how they're going to adjust. You heard John Cook get very emotional last week when he talked about how before they really, discussed, this was in the locker room moment when he's telling the team that he's retiring, that the team wanted 5 minutes to themselves so that they could just kind of gather their thoughts, and then came out in unison and said, we'll do whatever it takes for Dani. We'll do whatever it takes to make this work. And how he got emotional over that. Still, there will be a process, and it may not be as difficult simply because you have the Husker legacy behind it and you have the John Cook stamp of approval behind it. But there will have to be a buy-in factor, because it will be different. It always is when there's a new leader, and people like to do this, whether it's young athletes or people in business, whatever the case may be. They like to test the new leaders. Oh, I wasn't able to get away with this with the old boss, but let me see if I can try it with the new boss. Folks always like to push their limits.
Just to find out what the new limits are.
Exactly. We all do this. So this isn't just an athletics thing. This is everywhere in life. And it'll be curious to see, they knew what limits they could push with John Cook.
Yeah.
What will be allowed under Dani Busboom Kelly, and how does that all come together? Those are the little things you don't hear about right away, and really don't get fleshed out until either something really good happens
or bad,
or something really bad happens.
Deal with some adversity. See what happens when they lose for the first time next year.